Welcome to More Than a Few Words, a marketing conversation for business owners. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. And if you're like most business owners, you're working your sales funnel one lead at a time. And while that can work, it can also be a grind. And what you really want to do is unlock the opportunity to create a one-to-many situation where you're creating a little bit of effort and a lot of leads are coming back. And for many, the key is the right partnership. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And to have that conversation, I've invited Robin Waite back to join me. Robin is a dynamic and inspiring public speaker, author, and international business coach. He has a passion for helping others succeed and reach their full potential, and his energy and enthusiasm are a little contagious. With more than 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur and a business coach, he's got a wealth of knowledge and practical insights to share with you today. Robin, welcome back to the show.
I'm so honoured, Lorraine, to come back on for the second time. I don't know how many of your guests make it back for the second coming, but I'm here. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I am too. We had a lively conversation about pricing, and there'll be a link to that episode in the show notes. But today we're going to talk about this partnership where, well, I'm going to lead with the end in mind, and you're going to tell us how we got there. But you had one podcast interview that led to 1,500 leads and more than 130,000 pounds in new business. So, how did you do that?
Lorraine, I'm just going to hold for 1 second, right? You know, along the bottom of the window, we've got the bars going across with the sound. So I don't know if this is just my end. I can see your wave bars, but I can't see the waveforms against me when I'm speaking.
I can see the waveform for
Good.
you. You look beautiful. Thank you for
Good.
checking,
Okay.
but
I
we're
just
in
wanted to
good
check
shape.
because I didn't want us to get through 10 or 12 minutes and then there not be any sound on there. So good. Okay, great. Cue me back. We'll assume that bit worked. Just cue me back in with the question, then I'll get rolling with it.
Okay. So, how did we get there?
So I was very fortunate that to have during lockdown I was a part of a mastermind with which a group of friends sort of introduced me to, and there was I think 7 or 8 of us on this mastermind. We had a couple of YouTubers, and I was quite in awe of them because they sort of had, one had 500,000 subscribers, one had 1 million subscribers. Like, oh my God, YouTubers, wow, aren't they this shiny thing that we need to study? And a couple of other coaches on there, just some really inspirational people, and to get us through lockdown. And slowly over that period of time, I became friends with them. And I suppose one of the reasons why I had no idea about partnerships. I've been in business for 20 years, and I've been doing the grind, the slow, the steady, the one by one, the networking, all of the things that all the gurus and experts tell you to do. And then as I started to, one of the YouTubers kicked off this podcast. So this guy's called Ali Abdaal, for those who want to look him up. He's got, I think now 6 million subscribers on his main YouTube channel. And he's got a podcast called Deep Dive. And I saw a couple of people, I knew that he was going to launch it, and I knew that he had a great following. And I was like, oh, and I didn't quite know why, but I was like quite drawn to the fact I'd like to have been a guest on his podcast. And then he chose, his first guest was this guy called Tim Francis, who founded a business called Gymshark, which is like a multi-billion-dollar business now. It's huge. I was like, oh, rats. Why would he want little old me on there if he's had the likes, Tim Francis, Gymshark, and he's had these amazing people on? And then slowly over time, though, it evolved. I could see that he had different guests appearing on there, lesser known people. I thought, that's my opportunity. And a friend of mine actually went onto his podcast and said, oh, Robin, you have to go on there. He said, it will transform your business. And I was like, well, why? I couldn't quite understand why. And I also noticed this particular friend, he kept on appearing with very well-known people. So he'd have selfies of himself with like Stephen Bartlett, from Dragon's Den, our equivalent of Shark Tank. And Simon Sinek wrote the foreword for his book, and just these really like incredible people. And I was like, Simon, how did you do this? How did you get to know these people? And how did you manage to create these partnerships with them? He was really annoying. He said, I'm not going to tell you, Robin. Rats. right? He said, but watch, observe me, observe what I do, and like see why I'm doing it. See if you can understand why I'm doing it. So it's that very much that mentor thing. So I did. I started
So,
watching him.
so you knew there was something there, but you didn't know exactly what it was that he was doing. So,
Yeah,
but the first lesson is if you find someone successful, watch them till you figure it out.
yeah. So I was observing him and trying to, trying to figure out like just, it's about identity. It's like being a detective and figuring out what steps somebody took to do it. And like I've narrowed it down. There's 5 simple steps, right? Then this now sits on my desk, and this is now my marketing strategy, like literally on a little postcard. And the first thing which I noticed was that he was like hyper intentional about who he was going to be, he wanted to partner up with, and what it was that he wanted out of that partnership. So most people, I think the mistake they make, and I made this, when they first start out with partnerships, they're like, what's in it for me? But Simon's approach, so my friend Simon Alexander-Ong, he's got a brilliant book called Energize. This is the guy that I'm referring to when I say Simon. So Simon was always more interested in what he could do for the other person and what he could bring to the party than necessarily what it would do for him. And knowing that if he delivered like 10 times the value up front to that client in some way, shape, or form, that he would obviously get that paid back in dividends. So he was hyper intentional about like the few people that he wanted to create partnerships with. And so that's why he would pick the likes of Simon Sinek. It wasn't a coincidence that Simon Sinek published with Penguin Random House, who Simon chose as his publishing company, and that Simon Sinek only writes forewords and praise for books that are published through Penguin. So he used that intentionality to get on the same page and be in the same sort of space as somebody like Simon Sinek. The second thing was that like we're duped in like 2024 to hide behind our computers and our laptops, because we have this global marketplace of the world at our fingertips. And I noticed that Simon was obviously, once he'd chosen his partners, he was physically getting in the room with these people. So this is my second step on partnerships, is like leave your house, switch the internet off, and actually go and meet people. But don't just go and watch their keynote at an event. Make sure you buy a copy of their book, you book the VIP ticket, you can go up and do the meet and greet, and you can shake their hand, look into their whites of their eyes, and have a conversation with them. So be intentional and be in the room were like the 2 biggest things which I learned. So what I did is I started showing up to, so Ali Abdaal was on my hit list. He was going to be, if I can get onto his podcast, I knew that he would do great things, didn't know what. And he does events fairly frequently. So I was like, right, I'll just start going to Ali's events, like basically stalk the guy and just show up. And, I already knew him through the mastermind, so I had an in anyway. So, he knew who I was. And then what I realized was one day I showed up to Ali's events and they didn't have a microphone. So they were doing like a Q&A, but there was no microphone. So just me being me, I was like, I want to be helpful. So I went down to the front of the room, picked a microphone up off the desk, and Ali's looking at me like, WTF are you doing, Rob? Like, clear off, I'm doing an event. But then somebody put their hand up to ask a question. I took the microphone over, and then now I'm the mic runner at one of Ali's events. Nobody asked me to do it, right? So, and afterwards, Ali's general manager came up to me and said, Rob, I'm so grateful for you doing that. We just hadn't thought about it. We're really grateful because it means we've got some great quality clips now on video. Those will be going out onto his channel. Like, thank you. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So be intentional, be in the room, and then also be helpful, like add value. And it doesn't matter what that help looks like. It's like, you just find your way to be helpful, basically. And so gradually through that, I then got to know members of his team. And so his general manager, I got to know some of his editing team. I did some coaching work with them, again, just to be helpful and add value. No money exchanged hands. I enjoyed his vibe. I liked what they were about, so I wanted to be helpful. And then one day I got introduced to his podcast booker, and I got wind that they were recording, I think, season 6 and 7 or something like that. And they batched the recordings, did like 12 episodes per season. So they were doing 24 people back to back. And I said to Amber, his podcast booker, I said, listen, Ali's got 24 guests. If one of them happens to drop out, because inevitably out of 24 people, one will, I said, just put me on the subs bench. Like, I'll be super sub. If you've got an empty slot, I'll get on the train, I'll come down and I'll record, thinking nothing of it. And she was like, yeah, okay, no problem. So timing that ask was really important. But if I'd asked Ali directly, I don't think I would have got booked.
No, because he wasn't the one doing the work. You needed to be helpful to the person who really needed the help.
Yeah, that's it. So, and I call that traditionally it would have been the inside man, but we're in 2024, right? So it's find your inside person. That's tip number 4. So lo and behold, I get a call or an email from Amber. I think it was on like a Thursday. Hey, Rob, that super sub thing. Well, somebody's dropped out on Tuesday. Can you make it? And I was like, yep, heck yes. Sign me up. Put the phone down and I'm like, oh God, I've got school runs morning and afternoon. I've got 2 podcast interviews. I've got a client booked. I'm going to undo all of that just so I can get down to London when I don't know what's going to come of it. So we recorded a funny story. I'm going to share this with you, Lorraine, and I'm wary of time as well. So I know we're kind of coming towards the end of it. So I travel to London fairly free. It's about a 2-hour journey for me to get down to London from here. And I travel down there a couple of times a month. And I never pack. Why would you pack spare clothes for a day down to London, right? But this is an important interview. I know how many hundreds of thousands of subscribers he's got. So and we're recording. I don't know what the environment is. So I packed 5 shirts, right? I kid you not. It's just like they always say that when a bird poops on you, it's good luck. I walked out of Paddington Station and a pigeon pooped on me, like covered my head, my Fearless shirt, like white and poop all down it. And I laughed. I was like, what are the chances of that happening when I've got 5 shirts in my... So I ran into the Hilton Hotel, changed, and then, went to the recording. The rest is history. But that one interview changed my life. I kid you not. So the numbers are probably something which I think people will be really interested to hear. I hope. So we did that interviews, I think, had now 200,000 views. But in the first 90 days, I had 1,500 leads, right? There's a little bit of a backstory around the leads as well. If we have time, I'll be led by you on that. So 1,500 leads. I think I booked about 80 odd sales calls off the back of it and did over £150,000 worth of business. So that's about $180,000 in the first 90 days alone from one interview.
Wow. And it was just, that's the overnight success that took months, possibly even a year in the making, as you went through the steps of being really intentional, of getting out of your house, of being helpful, having that inside person, and everything aligning, not by accident, but because you really did it. I'm going to put a pin in it here and leave my audience wanting more. And I'm going to suggest, number one, I'd really love it if you would send me the link to the interview so that I can also show people what that interview looks like, but really encourage people to take the lessons here that if you want that overnight success, you got to put in legwork. Absolutely.
Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Robin, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for dropping by and bringing a little energy to the show.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. If you've enjoyed the conversation with Robin, be sure to click on the links that'll be in the show notes to my other conversation with him, as well as that interview that generated so many opportunities. And if you're looking for more tips for your business, look for MTFW wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen to 2. They're short. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.